Stitches, the marks of the needle, repetitive marks, moving, joining together, uniting things, healing, and an activity in time, over time. So the title of the show draws attention immediately to sewing and fabric as the medium of almost all this work. But also, it seems to evoke, or it does to me anyway, this idea that throughout the course of her career, the artist has been stitching and moving on and making the same repeated gestures, touching the same themes, weaving them together in different ways, things emerging and disappearing and coming out again. So the idea of a cross time, of traveling, passing through time, but also this movement. I don't think it's absolutely crucial to know all about Louise Bourgeois' life to understand, engage with, respond to, like or dislike the work. But she has been very eloquent about her life, and she's talked a great deal about her childhood and the experiences of her childhood and formative years are the obsessive driver. There's a trauma behind her work, and which she reconfronts every day. She's brought the baggage of her childhood, this kind of psycho baggage, with her. She's never left it, never put it to bed. Equally, she's brought the real baggage of her childhood with her. She's a great hoarder. So in many of the works, the fabric of the work, the things, the objects, the found objects and bits and pieces in them are in fact items that the artist or her family used and wore. So a piece like this, some of these garments are garments that Bourgeois would have worn in her youth. Her family were successful. There are extensive family albums, which are, seem incredibly evocative now. These black and white photographs seem to collage a picture of an idyllic childhood, surrounded by brothers and sisters and cousins. But, of course, this was a situation that was utterly shattered for Louise, her mother, and siblings, when shortly after her teenage years, shortly after puberty, an English nanny was appointed to take care of her and her siblings' education. And this nanny from London fell under the spell of Louise's father, and the two of them began an affair that was to continue for many years and was not conducted in secret, but it became a sore at the heart of this family. Her mother was deeply distressed, but never confronted it, and clearly it created a really dreadful, dreadful situation. The complex sentiments that this situation aroused have never left Louise. In a way, she's spent the rest of her life trying to deal with it. Well, this is a work from 2001. It's called Femme Maison, housewife, or woman home. And as you can see, it's the torso of a female nude. And resting on the rib cage, nestling between the breasts, is a very simple schematic house with a little doorway and two gables. The body is evidently female, but it has suggestions of the landscape. The breasts become hillocks. What's interesting about this work is that it's a theme that Bourgeois first explored in the mid to late 1940s, a very, very long time ago, at a time when she hadn't been in New York for very long. She was struggling as an artist to realize her very first works in sculpture, and she was also bringing up 3 young children. So the house was very much the environment that kind of surrounded and engaged her at that time. The house is at once embedded in the landscape, but is it weighing the landscape down? Is it a burden on the body, or actually is it the body that supports and nourishes the house? And of course, the role of the mother, the role of the daughter, in nurturing the family and supporting the house and being the giver, the carer, are key concerns throughout Bourgeois' work. The very earliest work in this show is from the 1940s, and we have a suite of very, very beautiful etchings. They're 9 plates, each one accompanied by a small text, and the title of the whole work is "He Disappeared into Complete Silence." Each image is an image that has a kind of architectural evocation. They are semi-abstract, but they evoke the kind of spaces and places that Bourgeois' fantasy would have constructed in the small hours in downtown Manhattan. And each text is a little sort of story and microcosm without beginning or end, but evoking a kind of sense of loss or disorientation. I wanted to include those works very much in the show just to make that jump, that leap, that stitch in time to connect these very recent works with her very, very earliest experiments in art. Because there is, despite the immense journey she's travelled in life and in art, this incredible contiguity, this kind of concertinaing. I'm standing with these 3 figures or totems around me. They're actually mostly untitled works, but there are a number of works like this that Bourgeois has made in recent years, and they are all stacked towers made out of individual components, and each individual component is a cushion, a stuffed fabric element. I suppose one of the things that is quite interesting about these, in a very simple way, they show how architecture can be made out of fabric, something innately without structure, can be very simply given a structural coherence, a load-bearing potential. Her very earliest works as a sculptor were similarly tall, architectural and figurative, semi-abstract pillars. And at the time, they seemed evocative of New York, of Manhattan's new architecture, of the skyscraper. These seem to me to have do the same sort of thing. But perhaps the emphasis on domestic architecture seems stronger now because of the fabric, because of the narrative elements in works like this, where you get bits of tapestry that actually depict stories or plants, so you kind of read them as you would a tapestry. Or this piece behind me here, it's mattress ticking. So there's a body thing. There's the bed, the body, the architecture. Since 2000, Louise has made lots of these very striking individual heads. They're about life size, some a little bit bigger. What's interesting about these works, unlike the Femme Maison, this is not a subject or theme that really has made itself manifest in sculptural pieces. Over her career, she's made very few heads, although the subject of the singular, solitary, tortured individual is inevitably at the root of her deeply autobiographical work. So it's very interesting that very late in life, or at an extreme old age, she's come to focus on this almost sort of existential isolation. Tapestry also seems to me to give them a greater feeling of age, so that they seem to evoke the Egyptian mummy or Peruvian grave dolls. They seem to have an ancient history to them. And yet, what is so bizarre, in these, the way the eyes are so extraordinarily detailed, and the kind of internal softness of the mouth, they feel almost like living presences. So to me, they're highly disturbing. A couple of years ago, Louise was invited to contribute to an exhibition on the theme of Oedipus. And this is an example, this piece, of what's very rare in Louise's work, which is actually responding to somebody else's idea. The piece itself comprises a number of small fabric figures, each one of which encapsulates a moment in the Oedipus myth. So there's Oedipus as a young child with his feet bound by this needle. There's the enigmatic Sphinx. Here is Oedipus himself, blinded by his own hand. Images of nurturing, of babyhood, of infancy, of adulthood, of death, of betrayal, of guilt. And here, in extreme old age, Oedipus, his two legs, his third leg, the stick, supported by his daughter Antigone as they go into exile. They're very strange, these dolls. They're enormously seductive, but also kind of creepy. And they feel maybe like the kind of dolls that children might be given, children who've suffered trauma, dolls that you might then reenact a moment of suffering, tools to articulate something that's very private, something very hidden away, tools for kind of psychoanalysis. But they're also very comforting, soft pink materials. It's the pink of bandages, it's the pink of old ladies' bloomers, it's the pink of flannels. There's something medicinal, healing, very strange.